Hello and welcome to my channel. I'd like to bring some analysis regarding the operations of the United Nations, most particularly with regards to the veto power. I call the use of veto a scam. Why I say that? Because this veto power has pushed many countries around the globe today scrambling for nuclear armament. And you're going to follow, and you'll find out as you follow with me in my presentation. First of all, before we go further, let's look at the structure of the United Nations. At the very top, we have 5 members, all with permanent membership, having veto powers. Among them, the United States, China, Russia, France, and the United Kingdom. So then comes the Security Council, where we have both permanent and non-permanent members, totaling 15 countries. At the very bottom, we have the United Nations General Assembly with a total of about 193 countries. So let us examine the veto power, how it's used, and you would understand with me why I call it a scam. So first of all, besides the permanent membership, the veto power is the most distinctive factor. The veto power, we consider it as the significant distinction between permanent members and non-permanent members. And what I want to share with you, the striking thing is the fact that this veto power is established right in the Charter of the United Nations. The Charter of the United Nations gives these powers to these countries. So it's right in the fabric of the UN. And all substantive decision, guys, of the Security Council must be made with the concurring votes of these permanent members. Any decision of substance must be made with the concurring votes of these permanent members. Critics call the use of veto undemocratic, and they say it's an element of the UN that is the main cause of inaction on war crimes and crimes against humanity. So when you sit and you wonder why you don't see United Nations anywhere acting on war crimes and many other issues, now you understand what is holding, what has incapacitated the United Nations. It effectively prevents the United Nations action against permanent members and their allies. So even friends of those permanent members are protected just with those veto rights of the permanent members. So follow along with me, guys. You're going to understand. I asked a few questions. Is it possible to abolish these veto powers? Let's find out. It says the permanent members do not agree to abolish nor even modify the veto system. Why is that? Because to them, if it is abolished or modified, the great powers would lose interest in the United Nations and they would do what they please outside of it. Guys, to me, this is what we call is either my way or the highway. Without their support to the United Nations and without their involvement, they believe that the United Nations would be ineffective. Of course, with your own observation around the globe today, do you think the United Nations is effective? It's not. So the next question I ask, can a permanent member be expelled? Let's follow around. The General Assembly may expel a member from the United Nations, but there is a but. First of all, what needs to happen? The Security Council vote to expel a member of the United Nations is required before the General Assembly can vote on it. Let's read the last line here. Preliminary Council vote requires a unanimous consent of its permanent members. Unanimous. You tell me, how possible is it to achieve unanimity with 5 members, all of them having veto powers? You see how the United Nations is archaic and is paralyzed. It's a paralyzed institution. Don't get me wrong, guys. United Nations, the reason I bring this because we need to fix it, because we need global solutions to global issues, not left in the hands of some local governments. Let's follow along. I decided to look at what is the purpose of the United Nations. The United Nations, first of all, created 1945, I believe Just coming out of the Second World War, there was need for that. About 51 different countries, they committed themselves to maintaining international peace. So the very purpose of United Nations is to maintain international peace and security, develop friendly relations among nations, promote social progress, a better living standards, and human rights. Sounds amazing, right? By the way, I got this right on their website, un.org. You can find this information there. The next piece of information I want to share with you, what about the Security Council itself? Security Council has primary responsibility under the United Nations Charter to maintain international peace and security. So literally what we're saying here is that the United Nations has accorded this the Security Council with the full responsibility and the rights to decide on maintenance of international peace and security. It is for the Security Council to determine when and where the United Nations peace operation should be deployed. Again, this information you can find out on peacekeeping.un.org. Readily available information, guys. You go out and find it. Let's go along. Here are some statistics I bring to you. How Veto is crumbling the United Nations. Follow along with me. I tried to find out how many times has the veto power been used. Russia alone has used it a whopping 143 times. The United States 86, UK 30, France 18, China 18 as well. So the next question I tried to ask, when was the last time they used the veto power? I found some interesting information. UK used it the last time was 1989, as well as France 1989. In my opinion, I feel they are kind of ashamed and they're walking away from this shameful system. But here's an interesting part, guys. A total number of times the veto power has been used, 295. I asked myself the question, how many times has the United Nations been sitting on resolutions? And then to think about that, close to 300 times it has been vetoed. What a waste of resources, time and money. The freshest in your memory you could recall, Russia just used it this year, about February or so, or March. I'm not very sure about the specific date, but they just used it regarding the crisis in Ukraine. Of course, this is an interesting piece here. How would you have powers like the veto power in your hands and not use it? So do you blame Russia for that? We should rather blame the system that is paralyzed. So all this information, these stats I got from Al Jazeera very recently, April 19 this year. You can find that information. Here's another interesting piece of information I'd like to share with you. How about the United Nations? It has used its veto power many times, particularly relating to Israel alone. And I bring this with purpose because if you look at the total number of times the United Nations has taken resolutions on Israel alone, I tell you it is way more than all other regions in the globe combined, just on Israel alone. And most of these times, US has vetoed those resolutions. So I consider the United Nations veto uncivilized, in my opinion. Why do I say so? Imagine useful, valuable time of learned men and women sitting in the Security Council on resolutions, and then one single member can just come and say, you know what? All what you've been saying is rubbish. I don't buy it. That was the United States using its veto power. Russia can do the same thing. Same with China. Or is it UK or France? The question I have on my mind is, with 5 different vetoes, how is it possible to arrive at any consensus? Check the probability of achieving a unanimity on a decision when you have 5 different veto powers looking in 5 different directions. After following what I shared with you guys, is it any surprise that there is a quest for nuclear armament? I mean, any country, if they had the means, they would try to be armed. And who pushed them into this position, in my opinion, is the veto power or the veto system of the United Nations. You either have your nuclear arms and you get your way, or you forever be subdued. So let's look at some countries that are scrambling to rule the world today, because if you are armed with nuclear power, you rule the world. Pakistan, don't be surprised, Nigeria want to do the same thing. France is already armed. Iran, North Korea, India, Russia, China, and the United States, and we don't know. Many more will be coming if this system is not changed. Imagine we literally are running the globe, leaving everything in the hands of some local government with their veto powers. Let's look at some issues that affect you and me today. The freshest on our memory is the pandemic. Think of where the pandemic is leading us to. We need global solutions. When they told you to stay home to save lives, I mean, what is life when you have to stay home in order to save lives? Or how many vaccines you have to take? Going back to the lifestyle of masks, it's like just telling you that the world is shut down, is closed. Sorry. Let's look at another issue that we have, that of the global warming. Imagine Donald Trump, who does not believe in global warming, handling issues with global warming. We need global solutions for that. And continuing with global warming, you may think that it's just losing some assets or just a thing for some animals running out of reserves, but you would be exhausted one day and you run out of options. Conflicts today, when we talk about conflicts, guys, local conflicts with the police, you can handle them. The issue in Ukraine today is not an issue that can be handled by one country alone. That's why we need global solutions. You and I are stuck on this planet Earth. It doesn't matter what I think or how I feel or my gender. We are stuck here. We have a common denominator, which we call gravity. We are one people. If I decide to leave the planet today, I have to go against gravity. I need to answer the question, how do I go against gravity? We are one people and we need to approach things as one people, in my opinion. Today, we've arrived at a level of civilization because of effort of great women and men with civilized minds. They got us to this position. But the actions of the United Nations and some of us are taking us back to the period of the pyramid. And in my opinion, it's like telling us that we have to live life of the gatherers. Literally, we should be forward thinking with civilization, because those who got us here today were thinking where they will be in futures. This is why we need to be civilized, looking forward, not the civilization where we are stuck arguing about who is the greatest civilization and which is the earliest civilization. That's why I bring to you civilization without borders. First of all, why civilization without borders? Let's look at characteristics. Civilized people, first of all, they have these common beliefs that they are all social beings. They have equal rights, everybody. They want to better the quality of their lives. And the most fundamental here, guys, is they believe that what affects one person affects everybody. This is not just a slogan of one for all for one. I mean, the pandemic has proven that to us. What affects one person affects all. You remember when the pandemic, when it broke out in China, Some people were wondering this thing, it was a thing of the Chinese, but I tell you, just within 4 months, it was declared a pandemic. Imagine, think about that. Within 4 months, we are communicating with each other globally. Maybe even within a shorter time, how many viruses have we been communicating without even knowing until the COVID-19 came to prove us? Think about that, let that sink. Can this kind of crisis be solved with a local approach if we don't have a global approach? So before I end here, launching civilization without borders, what is next? First of all, I want to appreciate you for watching. Please, before you leave from here, subscribe if you like what I shared with you. This is the first episode. There are going to be subsequent episodes coming up. So subscribe so that you'll be notified about my next post. The first thing, we need to build an audience, and I need your subscription, I need your views, I need your comments. So we need to drive some sensitization movement, and to do that we need to build that audience. So when you subscribe, share with friends and ask them to subscribe and share with their friends. Most important, guys, I would appreciate reading your comments about what you think are civilization blockades. This is what I'm going to focus on, and we look at the forward thinking civilization together. One more thing I'll encourage you, those people at the United Nations did not fall from heaven. We decided, we choose them to be there. So I encourage you in your local area, run in the government, or if you cannot do that, vote for a friend because of their ideas, not because of the friendship. Antonio Guterres in the United Nations needs our help. I never heard Zelensky invite Guterres to Ukraine with the crisis in Ukraine today. Maybe you heard, I didn't. But however, Guterres went there. I think that he is trying his best. But in the crisis in Ukraine, you tell me, where is the United Nations in all of that? Another question I will ask you, without interference from the NATO and the United States, if we had United Nations in Ukraine, do you think we will have the same outcome? The other question, how can we bring peace by fighting war? How would we achieve peace by fighting? How is that possible? So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.